editorial pressure, financial pressure, legal pressure. There was a lot to gain for a TV channel to actually toe the line.
But even if, let's say, there's a change of regime, what's happened is that now governments, politicians have got a taste of what it is like to truly control the media.
It's very boring to be middle of the path, rational, because everybody wants a little bit of masala.
You will be raided, you will be investigated. But if you do that, then you can at least attempt to maintain some editorial integrity.
I was thinking how to start this conversation. Then I remembered an interview that I saw 7 years ago. And the first question was, so much hua hai. Kitna kiya hai? Aur kya bacha hai? And I was like, okay, we have come a long way from that now.
When we went out as a television journalist with your camera and your mic in your hand, it was like, wow, the TV's here. Everything you said was believed. That respect is not there anymore. In fact, a line which I usually hear, and probably from many of you in the room, I don't watch TV news anymore.
My turning point was when I saw the ticker on Times Now, and it was breaking news that Sanjay Dutt had married Manyata. And I walked out.
The actual problem that TV news now in Ireland has is that it has remained extremely risk averse and quite dull. And I think the answers are actually the same for both problems. And it's not Fox, and it's not whatever's happening here on TV news, but it might be what you guys are trying on other platforms.
If what we are seeing in television is loud, shrill, terrible, it's also reflecting what is happening in social media, which is unbearable.
If independent news outlets like Newslaundry, Wire, Scroll, etc., with no resources, can get raided by the government, can take them to court, and continue to do quality journalism at a fraction of a budget, why can't media promoters also be willing to lawyer up?
You are reviving TV news. You're just doing it in a different platform.
So I think we were joking before the panel that this will probably be the shortest conversation.
And the panel discussion.
In Rumble, if you want a one-word answer, you'll get probably a sort of, I think, a consensus answer across the board.
Welcome back, everyone. We now come to what is easily one of the most exciting panels of the Media Rumble this year. A session that asks a sharp, comfortable question: can TV news be revived? On the panel, we have with us Maya Sharma, one of the very first trained television journalists in India, with 35 years of experience in journalism, including 26 years at NDTV, where she headed the Bengaluru bureau. She continues to mentor and guide the next generation of reporters. We also have with us Menon, an award-winning journalist and author who went on to co-found People Tree Stories, a pioneering platform for history and heritage storytelling. Her work bridges journalism, entrepreneurship, and cultural preservation. We are also joined by Sinead, journalist, broadcaster, and editor of the Journal in Ireland. She brings an invaluable global perspective on how television and digital news are evolving. Joining them all is Sreenivasan Jain, one of India's most acclaimed journalists with a career spanning 30 years in TV news. He previously hosted the program Truth vs. Hype on NDTV, a recipient of Ramnath Goenka Award and Reading Award. His fearless reporting and sharp analysis have set a benchmark for credibility in television news. Moderating this panel is Shabbir Ahmed, senior news reporter at the News Minute, who has spent years inside the country's television newsrooms at Times Now, Headlines Today, and NDTV Hindu.
Thank you, Harita. A disclaimer, we were all TV journalists at one point in time. Now we are not. So I wanted to begin this conversation by asking the most important question. Can TV media be revived? Vasu, one yes or no answer.
So I think we were joking before the panel that this will probably be the shortest conversation.
And the panel discussion.
In Rumble, if you want a one-word answer, you'll get probably a sort of, I think, a consensus answer across the board. So, look, obviously, when we express, or at least I feel that the prospects are bleak, you have to look at the reasons why TV news has been engulfed in crisis in India. It's almost unique because all over the world, TV news is facing challenges. But the catastrophic collapse of editorial standards in India has been quite something, and we've all been privy to that journey. And there are multiple reasons for that, but if I was to identify the two most serious reasons, one is obviously a highly overstressed market where you have 400 channels. I mean, 400 news channels in any one country is extraordinary, right? So you have 400 news channels chasing a fairly limited revenue pie. This is a pre-Modi phenomenon, a pre-Modi era phenomenon. And then you have the censorship of the Modi era. So you've had this twin two factors, which has led to this collapse. And many of us recall that when we started on this television journey, there were just a handful of channels. And there was sanity, there was occasional flashes of excellence, and there was a sense that people were flying in formation. But then as 4 and 5 went to 400, there was this war for ratings and a huge collapse of editorial standards. This was the sort of tabloid era of TV, which now we can't even remember. But this was when you had, Saas Bahu serials on prime time. You had astrologers predicting election outcomes. You had crime shows where anchors dressed as policemen and anchored from behind bars, but also ended up looking like criminals. So it was a kind of strange dichotomy. And then you had the screen, right? The screen became like this kind of psychedelic, like almost epileptic, seizure-inducing screen. So all of this predates the Modi era. And then you have the censorship that follows. And because there was this collapse in editorial standards already, it was quite easy to segue into then becoming propagandists for the regime and to peddle disinformation and hate and bigotry every night. This is, by the way, often seen as a fait accompli. So when we talk about can we revive it, this is something that media owners and promoters and newsroom leaders say that, listen, this is the reality. What can you do? But as we know, I mean, because Maya and I worked in an organization which showed that you can actually try to hold the line, but you have to be prepared to pay a price. So in short, that price is that you will be raided, you will be investigated, your promoters will have to spend hours and hours in the offices of investigating agencies. But if you do that, then you can at least attempt to maintain some editorial integrity. So essentially, you need money, you need access to money, and you need and you need to have a spine. And both of those are in short shift.
Okay.
So hence the prospect is bleak.
Okay. I was thinking how to start this conversation. Then I remembered an interview that I saw 7 years ago, where two top editors, disclaimer, I worked with them, they were my editors once upon a time. They were interviewing the Prime Minister. And the first question was, so much hua hai. Kitna kiya hai? Aur kya bacha hai? So much has happened. You have done a lot. And what is left? That was the first question. And I was like, okay, we have come a long way from that now. And a lot of things have changed in Indian newsrooms, Maya. So like Vasu pointed out, earlier we were chasing TRPs. Now there is propaganda on TV channels. How is this reflecting on ground? You have been a on-ground reporter for 35 years. You have mentored a lot of reporters. How is it reflecting on ground in your report?
I'll just quickly come back to the first question you asked. The yes,
yeah.
You wanted a yes, no, or a, There's a third also, maybe. Because survival could be, yes, the physical survival. I think TV channels will continue to exist because it's too powerful a propaganda tool for the people who are using it as such. But will it exist the way we knew television news, the way we tried to do television news, the way it was? I will say maybe. I won't say no because I'm hopeful that there's a young generation which is coming in with some values. But on the ground, oh my goodness, when we first started out, and I think this predates even before you began, when we went out as a television journalist with your camera and your mic in your hand, it was like, wow, the TV's here. Everything you said was believed. Everything you said had a credibility about it. People wanted to come on television. People watch television. Not maybe the younger people here, but perhaps the people who are above, 30? The people who are above 30. You would watch an evening bulletin. You would watch the news. There was a credibility about it. There was a thing, I want to know what's going on. You had news from around the country. What has changed on the ground is that sometimes when you go to a place. That respect is not there anymore. In fact, a line which I usually hear when you talk about television or something is, and probably from many of you in the room, I don't watch TV news anymore. It's just stopped. That is a great big change. On the ground as well, there's sometimes anger when you appear. There's sometimes anger. We've seen it, of course, in neighboring countries when Indian journalists have gone around. There is sometimes anger for the TV journalist who's working for these very biased media channels when they do get onto the ground, if they do go onto the ground, because that is also becoming much less. And I think there's a greater deal of cynicism. But again, it's people who are cynical who are not watching anymore. The people who are still watching are probably very much buying what is being offered, are very much welcoming what is being offered, because they're hearing what they want to hear. When, as the previous panel said, you don't shake hands. Yes, because we showed them, and how it went from, I'm not watching that match, to I'm watching that match. We really showed them with, the gestures and all. So I think today's television news is catering to today's television audience. And on the ground, people do not any longer expect what the basics of TV news should be. Whether it's the truth, whether it's questioning authority. I think there is that change in expectations, which is very sad. Because for the very young, that's all they've grown up with. That is the TV news they know.
Right. Thank you, Maya. I want to go to Minnie. Minnie, you have been part of several TV newsrooms. You were the founding members of Times Now and CNBC. We have been discussing about political news, and we know channels that cover politics, they have completely gone to the other side. It's completely different there. But what about business newsrooms? How have they changed over the years? And particularly after 2014, like Vasu said.
Right. Shabbir, actually, while coming here, I was thinking maybe my next book should be on television news because I've actually worked through my career in various experiments with television news, right? I'm going to give you a 1-minute background and then come to this. I started my career in an organization called TVI. It was part of the Business India Group. It was run by a very lovely bunch of left liberal, JNU, Lutyens Delhi combination, beautiful people, didn't have any business sense. I joined, I never got paid. I still love all of them. They are great friends. And it was a beautiful experiment. Shekhar Kapoor used to be our entertainment head. And very famously, at that time, they went to Jaipur to do a film on Lakh Bangle Makers, which was supposed to be a 1-minute filler, and blew up about 15 lakhs doing that. So it was really lovely. Okay. Then I joined CNBC TV 18 as part of one of the founding members. They were at that time a very small outfit out of a theater in Delhi. That was the office. And I saw a very... So business news was a slightly easier universe to tackle, simply because you were dealing with an audience that was left-brained, had a clear idea what they needed out of news. You were serving a purpose. There was also a very good template that had come, which was CNBC International, which was really stock market coverage, which was the primary aspect of it, across markets from Japan to the US. So there was relevance throughout in that 24-hour wheel. Also, they had a very good sense very early on, and I think I must give credit to Raghav, that he had a sense of how news and information could be used in multiple formats to perhaps not give returns right away, but give returns over a period of time. So, before that, I was also in a Rupert Murdoch-funded organization, Star TV, which was flushed with funds. And that time, it was all about journalism of access. Who do you know? Who can you get? That kind of stuff. But having said which, in that whole journey, I've been in Times Now, I've been after that in Bloomberg, I feel that journalism, good journalism, can happen only if there is a robust business model. Yeah? And that robust business model needs constant innovation. Journalism needs constant innovation. All formats don't work because audiences change. The entire era is changing. And if what we are seeing in television is loud, shrill, terrible, it's also reflecting what is happening in social media, which is unbearable. What is the difference between that fake news that you're getting on your feed and the channels that you're watching? I could argue the channels that we are watching are also, catering to the people who come out of, a hard day's work, are so frustrated they want somebody to punch, and you have these debating studios where everybody's getting punched, and you pick up punching bags, and Pakistan is a great punching bag, right? And you find people you want to punch, and that is the purpose.
In Sreenivasan, Pakistan, BCCI.
Yeah, these are punching bags.
Yeah.
So my point is that, to the question, and I'm going a little all over the place, but to answer your question, will television survive? Will TV continue? I think it will in this current form. But is this a TV that we need, that we deserve, that we should have? No, it is not. And there are formulas to make that happen. And we should come to that, because let's not sit and talk about how bad things are, but we also need to see what the solution is. In business news, on the whole, I think CNBC created a great formula. So I was referring to the creation of Money Control. Money Control today is about 15% of its revenue. It also acted as a way of archiving a lot of the information. So over the last 20 years, they have fantastic information and data. I worked in Bloomberg, and I can tell you, Bloomberg runs on that data. The bulk of its money comes from the terminal. So it is information that people can use and pay money for. That is the core of the success of these two channels. Can another business news channel work if it has something? And we've seen the experiments, right? I was part of Bloomberg TV in India. It didn't quite work out. You have, BQ that is there. I don't know whether it'll work out. But business news as a formula works when there is a robust business model and there is a reason for its existence. And I think Economic Times has a connection with the print, so it is going to work. So on the whole, I think it was easier, it was safer and cleaner to be in a business news channel, and that's why I landed up over there, because I think my moment of truth was when I was in Times Now, and I always thought I was a political journalist and not a business journalist, because that was where my heart was. And my turning point was when I saw the ticker on Times Now, and it was breaking news that Sanjay Dutt had married Manyata. And I walked out of that. I said, I don't want to be part of this news. This is not what I signed up for. But in business news, it did work. Now, it didn't work in pockets where the kind of people who came on were also problematic. So you must realize that the people who made great news channels in India were technocrats. They were people who came from middle-class households, were very well educated. They wanted to make change. So is it Dr. Roy? Was it Raghav Behel? Was it Ronnie Screwvala? They were all people who had their heart in the right place, okay? And they did a very good job. The moment that went into the hands, and it's a story in progress, and we don't know how it's going to go, it goes into business hands, new business hands, because one could argue that the Jains and Hindustan Times are also businesses, but they have been around for long enough. Their core business is news. So they know that they have to be credible, and they have to be strong, and they have to be everything to continue to be in the news. But the moment news and business news went into those hands, I feel, and it's not very obvious in business because nobody's screaming and shouting, but I do believe that there has been a shift. And I don't think that will last out because there is no credibility. At the end of the day, a lot of money moves on business news. So credibility becomes a very, very big aspect. And I think there, CNBC and the Bloomberg terminal have kind of shown that it can work. Of course, there are commercial interests that come in. There are business houses who are trying to push their agenda. And that's where walls have to be built. You know, one of the things that I don't know whether that's true right now, but one of the things that we were not allowed to do when we were in CNBC, I've never had a demat account. I mean, I've never traded in shares. I was never allowed to buy shares.
Okay.
And I'm not too sure if those firewalls are still there, you know, because you're dealing with so much of sensitive information that...
I think it's happening, I've heard. So,
yeah, so even I've heard.
Yeah.
So that's where it has gone down the tube, I think. But I think business news was far saner, far more educated the audience was, and so it was a safer place. But yeah, there are lots of excesses that have happened, then we can discuss about that.
Sinead, I was having a conversation with Sinead, and we were talking about the global media, how it is. And one thing that came up during our conversation is the foxification of media. But somehow Ireland has resisted it. How did it happen, and what exactly is happening on the other side of the world, in your side of the country?
Yeah, I've been having a crash course in Indian TV news over the last few weeks. The embassy have sent me reading materials, and I've been watching as much as I can since I landed on Thursday. And just to answer your question, obviously I have no expertise at all, but from the outside looking in, when you ask, can TV news be revived? I think everything that people in this room are doing and you guys are doing, if you're platform agnostic, which I have been for most of my career because I'm someone who writes but has done that digitally since I started, you are reviving TV news. You're just doing it in a different platform, but people are watching it on the screens that are on their walls. They're watching it on their screens, on their computer desks, or in their pockets. So you actually are doing it, and it depends on what the audience. Will they follow you guys, or will they stay where they are at the moment? So I would say keep going. It's more than a maybe from an outside view. The view from Ireland. So we're a very small country, 5 million people, as Kevin said, and we're situated, right between the UK and the US, where the Foxification started and commuted very quickly into the UK. We have resisted it. I think on one side because we always want to be a little bit different to the British, and we want to maintain our difference as much as possible and in as many ways as possible. And I mean that flippantly, but also very deeply. Like it's and we have seen how dangerous it is on the US side. So we're very close to the US economically, and we are very close in a lot of ways because of the movement of people between the countries, mostly from Ireland to the US, but people who have maintained extremely close links. So we've seen how divisive it can be, how dangerous it can be, what impact it has on politics, and we've wanted to remain boring. So the actual problem that TV news now in Ireland has is that it has remained extremely risk averse and quite dull. So it's actually the opposite problem to most of the rest of the world, where people are finding comfort, but they are also lessening their viewership. So the viewership is still really strong, like Kevin said. We don't have any 24-hour rolling news station. We don't have the audience for it. Sky News came in, UTV came in, ITV from the UK, and both left. So the audience really isn't there. But for what is there, there's current affairs programming, news programming every day on the two channels that do provide news. The audience is strong, but it's also declining. So that's the issue that we have. And I think the answers are actually the same for both problems, is to get the balance in what the audience wants and get that right. And it's not Fox, and it's not whatever's happening here on TV news, but it might be what you guys are trying on other platforms.
Thank you. Vasu, I want to come to you quickly. Over the years, we have seen several newsrooms, but what I'm concerned about after 2014 is a change in character of these newsrooms. Earlier, newsrooms were accused of being biased, channels were accused of being biased, but channels are now being accused of being communal. So, how does that happen in a newsroom? Is it an individual, or is this the current political ideology that they are clinging on to?
So I think it's probably a combination of both, where you might have certain media proprietors and owners and newsroom leaders who feel a certain way about the communal question, and post-2014, they have greater license to express it. But I think the scale of it, right? Because what we're talking about, it's not as if it's just that the BJP, which is being adverse or is censoring the media. India has had a long history of that. It's the scale of what has happened post-2014, where virtually every single television channel has been made to fall in line. So even if you have a diversity of views, which is what you would have in normal times, that you have certain channels that are more liberal in bent and others that are more conservative, that difference has been eliminated. So to answer your question, I think the communalization is largely a phenomenon of the coercive nature of the Modi government. That if you don't fall in line, if you're not pushing government propaganda, communal talking points, attacking the opposition night after night, you'll have consequences. And so I think that's the reason why I was saying at the outset that how does that change? That only changes when you have a change of regime, right? But even if, let's say, there's a change of regime, what's happened is that now governments, politicians have got a taste of what it is like to truly control the media. And we are now seeing that replicated in states as well, including in the South, including in the North. So it's going to take a huge shift that even if tomorrow you do not have the Modi government at the top, how is that going to alter the relationship between the government and the press? Then, as I said, you come to the commercial question, which Minnie mentioned as well, that how do you manage a marketplace of 400 channels, right? Everyone said that there'll be a shakedown, channels will fold, and there'll be a kind of leveling out. That hasn't happened. More channels are being added, and existing ones have been bought over by, oligarchs, government cronies, real estate tycoons, mining barons, and kept alive. So both these two extraordinary distortions have to change before anything can really change. But I just want to add another dimension to this crisis, which speaks to what Sinead was saying about, the dullness of TV. And I think what's happened is that because of these extraordinary pressures, newsroom owners and leaders and promoters have used that as an excuse to turn TV into something dull and unwatchable. You just have, talk now across the board. And the excuse is that, oh, listen, it's cheap, it's fast, we don't have money, so this is what we're going to do. Well, actually, there's so much evidence that if you do intelligent reporting, you do in-depth stuff, you do investigative work, you can both get, you're doing your job as journalists, and you're also able to make money because people want to watch that. And that's why you have this huge online audience, which is essentially consuming quality journalism. So it shows you there's an audience. It's just that TV has decided that they want to check out of it. And you have these excuses now to do that. So that's going to be a third challenge, that, how do you go back to actually doing compelling journalistic work on TV?
Can I just jump in there? Because there was a point made on the previous panel that news avoidance is often used as an excuse. Oh, well, people aren't reading anymore. It should be a challenge rather than an excuse for editors and for producers. We had a news broadcaster. He ran a nightly current affairs show. We had the recession hit Ireland extremely badly. We had the IMF take over our finances, so we were in, ourselves and Greece were in the worst situation in Europe. And Vincent Browne, on paper, should be the worst TV broadcaster there is. He mumbles, he does not have a TV look, he forgets things, he goes off on tangents. But he put together a current affairs show that was willing to take risks and willing to have intelligent debate. He didn't green light producers saying, oh, this person's on this side of the spectrum and this person's on this side, so they'll punch each other. He got people who were quite close but disagreed on points within the debate at hand, which made for compelling appointment viewing. So he had a huge audience that even if you didn't watch, you had to know what was happening the next day to get through your day in the office. That's the kind of television that people want, and that will make a difference. And you just have to have people willing to make those high-level decisions. He made a decision back in 2012 to never run a TV show that was not gender balanced anymore. So he was the first person in Ireland to do that, and he stuck to it. He would have producers crying at 10:30 at night before he went live. He was like, you don't have a woman, you have to get...
You're doing good.
Yeah, we were doing really good here.
These rooms are full of women.
Yeah, and now they are, but he was the one who made that change. When we voted same-sex marriage in 2015, when he was putting together that show, everybody else did the usual election shows. It was a referendum, so there was going to be ballot boxes and you'd go to the count centres and you'd do your report out. Vincent decided, you know what the best thing we could do here is we'll go to the George, the most famous gay bar in Dublin, and we'll report from there. And it did so well that the initial 2-hour show ended up being an 8-hour show, because he was just interviewing so many people that this referendum directly impacted. And he had performers, he had celebrities in, he just made it a complete, entertaining but informative show that even though we had voted it in, people knew what they were doing. Afterwards, everyone knew what it meant then as well. So he was making decisions constantly, which made it a must-watch that took risks and kind of broke the mold a bit. We know that that's what works in Ireland, but no one's doing it again because everyone has become afraid of oh, if we do that, will it just push people too far? Will it push people away from us? So yeah, we all just need to get back to being able to make those decisions again, I think.
Shabbir,
Yeah.
I have a point on the business model. Again, I come back to the business model because I really think that's the core of it. Now, Vasu mentioned about the fact that, it's all about breathless news, it's 400 channels, all of that. But can I tell you that I don't know what the numbers are now, but roughly running a channel, a television channel, costs a lot of money. It's about 150, 120 crores. And if you are licensing a foreign partner, you have a license fee of about 30, 40 crores. You have a running cost of about 60, 70 crores. Now, that's a lot of money. The advertising pie is very small. And the only regular advertiser today is the government or parties because of the constant electioneering that we have, because those are the budgets that come out of there. So they are the people who are funding these channels, okay? That's part A. What's also happened, and I think we saw this trend pretty much early, there were two things that happened. The first was the middle of all news channels got deleted out because they were redundant. Neither were they getting the TRPs on top, neither were they running around and getting that, the kids, we went and hired from every media school, the whole batch, and then, out of that, it was like a McDonald's model. You got them in, train them, 20 would stay. So it became like that, and the middle completely went off. So everything was about a studio, an anchor, and a lot of minions working for the anchor. And that is a formula that has kind of continued. So there was no journalism that went. I remember a very smart young journalist who was working with us went to join a bureau of a channel and in a regional hotspot, a bureau, and said that the only time he was called on for national news was when there was a celebrity in Lilavati. And that was the only reporting he did. So, he was super frustrated that he walked out. So that was one part of the problem. The second is that, this in a journey, and anybody who's been in television for a couple of years, that there is this expansion, there's a collapse, there's an expansion, there's a collapse. The expansion happens before an election because everybody wants to make a bouquet channel to get as much ad revenue as you want. So you actually bulk up and then you collapse. And there's no real reason for any of those channels to survive. But Vasu, they will all survive because they are funded by real estate barons and by politicians who need that mouthpiece, because it's also a way of, they're the muscle men of today, right? They are the muscle men of the rural, this thing, if you want to take over a debate. They're like the trolls that you have on social media. So there is this problem that we have to acknowledge. And I think the only way it will go off is actually, in today's, any country, actually, it's very boring to be middle of the path, rational, because everybody wants a little bit of masala.
Yeah. Otherwise, you will be branded as anti-national.
No, not only, forget anti-national. Come on, it swings both ways. It's not like that. The pendulum came here because it was also wildly left, right? So everybody wants angular views. If you don't have an angular view, and it worked very well for us actually. We still have a history platform, and India is very prickly about its history, right? Everybody gets pissed off. You can't, do a history story without pissing off 5 people. But we played a very smart role, and I hope we don't get caught out with it. We played a very factual, middle of the path, serious history kind of a role, where we didn't get involved in any of the debates or the sides that people took. So it was a very neutral. It was boring, but I think what we covered in the 8 years was fabulous, and I think that's going to really take us a long way.
Maya, I want to come to you. Like Vasu said, there is viewership for good quality journalism, good content. But how did TV media become the first line of defense of the government? Because like when we were covering during the UPA regime, we were asked to get documents, file investigative stories on 2G scandal or the Commonwealth scam. We will have to, get all these documents and do investigative stuff. But now I see editors sitting in the newsroom and saying there's no scam in this. Now they say that being a nationalist is a prerequisite of being a journalist. So how did these lines come up, and how these newsrooms became, the first line of defense for the government?
It was in their own interest. It's the carrot and stick approach. Vasu talked about the stick approach, where, you're punished if you stand up and question authority. You're punished. Your media houses are raided. Journalists are arrested. Journalists are killed. That stick approach has been there in the past, also pre-2014 as well. But there's the punishment, but there's also the carrot approach, the advertising revenue. You're talking about government ads. I mean, the hosts of this very session have talked about the amount spent by the small state on advertising. Government advertising is a huge source of funding for television channels. And NDTV didn't get any advertising from BJP, state or central governments. You're not getting revenue, which is keeping the channel afloat. So you're not going to want to piss off a government if they're going to cut your ads. If you're doing it, you're facing the consequences. So it's that carrot and stick approach, whether it's legal action against you, whether it's... The BJP also stopped sending spokespersons to NDTV. Not here in Karnataka, because Karnataka politicians are a different set. There's a different mindset here. But across the country, they didn't even send representatives for a debate. So editorial pressure, financial pressure, legal pressure. There was a lot to gain for a TV channel to actually toe the line. So they went a bit further. Rather than just, we won't oppose them, let's just cheer for them. And it doesn't help that some channels are bought by people who are very close to the powers that be. It doesn't help crony capitalism, and the people who are owning the channels which are working today are people very close, and they're very interested in maintaining the status quo and making sure that the people in power are happy, because they're so close to the people in power that they are in power.
Vasu, I want to quickly come to you. Recently, your interview with former Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, went viral. Did you expect for him to give you new grounds on the Ayodhya case? Because you read his judgment. I thought you were very thorough with this judgment. Maybe
More thorough than you.
I think I didn't know. Like, I didn't expect. When I was watching that interview, I thought there'll be this moment, dosti bane rahe, and he'll drink water. But that did not happen. But you got the answers. What was the planning and preparation that went into doing this interview?
Okay, I'm intrigued by the segue in the conversation from the revival of TV news to the Chandrachud interviews. I'm trying to think of how to link the two. I think
that was good TV.
No. So yeah. I think it speaks to what we've been talking about, that I think one of the reasons why I guess it was so widely consumed was because of the fact that you don't see that now on regular TV. And I think overall the art of the adversarial interview has virtually died. Everybody just speaks in echo chambers. So it's a rare chance to speak to someone who's seen as sort of sort of aligned with the regime in some ways. So, I mean, the short answer is that, you prepare for it like you prepare for every interview, that you do all the research on all the possible avenues that you want to take the interview. The advantage in the case of somebody like Chandrachud was the fact that he's given a whole score of interviews, so you have a sense of what he's going to say to certain questions. And then you follow what I call the answer tree approach, where you say, okay, if you ask him this and he's going to go in this direction, then how do you counter that? And so you war game like multiple scenarios. But in his case, because he's also an extraordinarily erudite man, he's very well read and articulate, I had to do like even more research. I was speaking to lawyers, I was speaking to people in the legal fraternity, because we were really going to get granular if he gave us that opportunity. So I had come prepared. I didn't know in which direction it would go. He in fact started by saying in his interview, he said that the judgment is done, it speaks for itself, I'm not going to reopen it. And then he actually ended up reopening it. So yeah, it was, again, coming back to the subject, that it clearly shows you that there is enormous appetite for anything like this, which is impactful, which is speaking truth to power, which is, challenging authority. So I actually feel that I don't think it's necessarily about taking polarized positions. I think it's about avoiding the great curse of TV and journalism in general, which is called the view from nowhere, where you don't have a view. It's just this happened and that also happened. Our job is to actually tell people exactly what's happening. It's not that, can't say that, is it raining outside? Say, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You look outside the window and say, it is raining. So I think if that kind of journalism is brought back onto TV, you're both going to get viewers and ratings and credibility, but that won't happen till, for starters, media promoters lawyer up, right? If independent news outlets like Newslaundry, Wire, Scroll, etc., with no resources, can get raided by the government, can take them to court, and continue to do quality journalism at a fraction of a budget, why can't media promoters, with 300, 400 crore annual budgets, also be willing to lawyer up and go to court and fight these battles in the interest of independent news? Right? It's crazy that they don't do that. But that's a pathway towards trying to turn things around.
Human nature is that you hate to feel like you've missed out. So I feel like I've missed out on whatever this interview is. I'm like, send me a link. I'm going to watch it later.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, sorry,
but that is what you're always wishing for when you're making TV news. So that we all became journalists because we don't like feeling left out of information. We want to know all the things that, like, I get text from my mom when something happens. So she's like, here, what's the actual story? Because she knows I'll know more that I can't print. But that's what people want. And that's what we need to make sure TV news is for people. It's a gateway into them finding out more so that when they talk to their friends, they can be as informed and as learned as the people they're talking to, and they don't feel left out and they don't feel left behind. That's why that did well. I'm sure it went crazy on WhatsApp groups, people sharing it. Have you seen this? Have you seen this? Have you seen this? It's not rocket science that we want TV news to be able to do, but it's getting back to that point after the Foxification and after what's happened since 2014 here.
I have another follow-up question for you. What happened after the interview?
See?
That's the question. I agree. Everybody wants to know what happened after the interview. Like, did you get long WhatsApp messages, phone calls?
From Justice Chandrachud?
Yes.
No, I didn't. So basically the interview ended. This was an interview I did of a former Chief Justice of India who was responsible for a number of consequential and controversial verdicts. And some of the things he said were quite, let's just say, extraordinary. And so basically the interview ended and we were all still processing because it was a very kind of heated exchange. And he also said these sort of shocking things. And I was in my head thinking, have I gone too far? And so then I was trying to lighten the mood by saying, when the mics were off, that I hope you're good. I thought you were going to walk off at some point. And he said, no, why? It was fine. I was prepared for this. How do you think it went? And in my head, I was thinking, wow, like he has no idea what he said. I have a bombshell, set of answers that he's given that I can already see how it's going to play out. And I was like, no, it went really well. I mean, yeah, that's a kind of general safe answer. And then he said, okay, great. And then he said, you must all have vegan snacks. He's a vegan. It's an all-vegan household. And, Justice Chandrachud's vegan snacks are famous. Quite often his interviews end up becoming about those snacks, which is the problem. That's why he doesn't get questioned as he should. So then we all sat around, the Newslaundry crew, and then he sort of sat with us. He was unfailingly courteous. And we all had these snacks, and we walked out of there, and then we just got to a safe distance, and we all turned around and went. But no, I haven't heard from him since then, but I've been seeing that he's been doing other interviews where he claims that he was misquoted, etc., which, as we know, it's all on the record, isn't the case.
Yes. Minnie, I want to talk to you about the vision that you had for news channels, because you were part of setting up these channels, right? So there is a vision you must have come up with when you are setting up channels. But over the years, what has happened is completely a collapse of the vision, or is this still relevant? Still, it can be done. For example, the Times Now. You were part of the Times Now, but now what Times Now looks like is completely different. Right?
Yeah. There's some anecdotes. I don't think I should say it publicly.
I think there are a lot of off-record stories that are coming in. I want those off-record stories. Please do.
Famously, we went and met Mr. Jain, Sameer Jain, when we were about to launch. Because, Times Now for a long time was Times When. Because we had some kind of, the Times of India group at some point had some investors who had moved to the Pakistan side after the independence, and there was a problem with our license or whatever else. I mean, it was a crazy situation, but it became Times When, Times Why, all of those stuffs, and we used to bear the brunt of it. And I remember going, three of us, four of us, the editorial team had gone to meet Mr. Jain, and he's a very philosophically, he is that kind of person, and his vision for Times Now was, I don't know if any of you must be knowing Rajiv Mehrotra, right?
Yeah.
Very erudite, very deep, very old school. And he wanted Times Now to reflect the principles of Rajiv Mehrotra and deep insights into Indian history, culture, politics, etc. And that's exactly the opposite that we did in Times Now. So there was this, the absolute opposite of what Rajiv Mehrotra stood for. But having said which, I think, at least me, I came with a lot of, I think I was very passionate. I am very passionate about journalism, and I came with a lot of. I was not very practical when I saw what was happening, and I think there was a lot of sense that this is something that is essential for the nation. There's something that we need to do. Information is everything, etc. And I saw that dwindling and dwindling and dwindling, and I was extremely dejected. And I think that dejection is the reason why I moved out. And I also felt that while we were sitting in rooms discussing inane things, and a lot of our coverage was about the inner workings of a political party and all sorts of nonsensical things which actually have no relevance to the larger mass of people who we are supposed to be serving, I felt that, it's time to move out and do something which is really meaningful. And that's what we did with Live History India, which is now People Tree Stories. Because in India, if you think people are cooking up history, you should see what we are doing to our history on the ground. We are wiping it out. And that was the reason we did that. So I feel that it was a downward spiral, but I do think that this room is full of like-minded, intelligent people who still believe journalism has purpose. And I believe that the medium has changed so drastically that television as a medium is irrelevant now, because everything that television did is now on social. It was unthinkable to be able to start a channel, which I did, a digital channel, with very little money in 2015, 16. So it's very easy to do it. It's just about coming together and actually finding an answer to some of this stuff. I think a collaborative approach is very, very important. I think that ancien regime is going to remain, and it's going to flourish, and it's going to serve the purpose it is supposed to serve. But every intelligent person that I know is not watching that anymore. So I really wonder who's watching it. I don't know anybody who watches news, honestly. I don't know anybody who watches news unless there is an air crash or something which is drastic that has happened, and then you put on news and you watch it. But nobody in my circle or nobody that I interact with, do any of us watch news? When is the last time you watched 9 o'clock news when you were not on it?
I was not watching TV even when I was in TV.
Yeah,
I can now confess.
The point.
But I slightly disagree here. I said this yesterday as well, that I think if you travel outside cities and you travel outside elite circles, television is a very, very powerful instrument of communication.
But regional news, Vasu, English news, it's in the bureaucratic circles, it's in the government circles.
I'm not specifically talking of English news, which has always been niche. I'm talking of Hindi and regional. Hindi. It is still very important in agenda setting. It is still driving the narrative. People are consuming it on their phones, but those are clips from news channels. Which is why, again, to repeat what I said yesterday, the government is obsessed with controlling TV, because they realize that even as digital expands and there are other avenues of information, TV continues to be a very, very vital source of information and a source of setting the agenda. So I don't think that has changed that much in my view.
I'm specifically talking about English news.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
English news
speaking about this audience and the discussion that we are having. I do think that, this is the manthan that we are seeing. There is going to be a bloodshed. There are going to be channels that collapse. That's fine. But I think it's also time for a realistic relook at what we can do. And I think, this is the golden age of content. Look at the kind of content we are getting. You look at the podcasts, there are no barriers. There are no regional barriers. You can get podcasts from the US everywhere. There are such beautiful opportunities to create niche markets, to reach out to people. Live History India's Prime was reaching 3 million people. That's phenomenal for a history platform. There is so much of opportunity. We should quit cribbing and do some great work.
Right, that's all we have time for. We have questions? 3 questions quickly. Okay, there are lots of people who want to ask questions. Okay.
Hello.
Brief.
Yes, brief. I wanted to ask, I there's been a general agreement amongst the panelists that the credibility of the media houses have taken a big hit, and there's more misinformation now than ever. So, like Ms. Minnie was saying, we need solution. So can there be a fact-checking, institutionalized fact-checking mechanism? Like I know that there is something called the IFC, the International Fact-Checking Network. That's a separate discipline, actually. But then, can that be incorporated with the news channels, and it should be made mandatory in this age of misinformation? I think it should not be a choice whether to have spying or not, or whether to be critical or not. It should be mandatory, and it should be legally, it should be the rule.
Got it.
There are fact-checking networks within India as well, and many media houses do have a fact-checking wing. They do have it. That is also very much there. But again, it becomes a slightly dangerous thing when it's mandated, because you're walking on the line of censorship. It should be internal. It should be self-regulation. In an ideal world, we're not in an ideal world.
Ma'am, like how the IFC does it is, the parameters are set. Like, there should be transparency with regarding your funding, your sources, how your methodology.
There is a FCN also. There's a fact-checking network in India also.
There is a network. I think Google also has, fact-checking. They have newsrooms. Yeah. Okay, fine. Yes, you can meet the guest outside and you can have that discussion.
Also, there are platforms like India Spend, etc. Right?
India Spend, Alt News.
See, the fact is,
I know.
They're small, and they will remain small if they're not supported. So one of the conclusions could be: can we make a collaboration of all the small guys who are trying to do their little bits and come together to create a larger whole? And I think that will be wonderful, because that will be a business model for them to do more fact checking and more. Yeah, absolutely. Right now, it's like a mosaic of small little pieces, all trying to survive, targeting the same community.
Okay, we'll take one more question. Yeah.
Hi, this is Alok. Yeah, my question was relating to the way the TV media covered the Israel-Iran war. They were very one-sided, supporting Israel. And I mean, what is the use for that? I mean, because the Iranian ambassador in his interview with India Today also said that the news reporting wasn't biased. So it sort of affects our foreign policy as well. So is it the ministry telling them, listen, we are with Israel, so you have to support them, support the bombings that Israel is doing, condemn everything that Iran is doing? Why did they do that? What sort of message?
Vasu is reported from Gaza, right?
Yeah, no, so sorry, just very quickly on the fact-checking thing in TV channels, that's never going to happen, right, in the current climate. TV channels are fully aware that they're lying. So this is like it's not a bug, it's a feature. So I don't think that's like a question that ever arises that, okay, we're going to have fact-checking. They're aware that they're pushing, misinformation every night. To your point about a biased approach when it comes to a foreign policy subject, yes, it's very much part of the way in which the government is setting agendas for the media. So whether it's how you take a line on a political question or on a communal question, it's also now leaked very much into how we report on foreign policy, that because there's this increasing alignment between India and Israel, India has deviated drastically from its earlier position on the Palestinian question, that you now see that same jingoistic approach when it comes to covering Israel, Iran, so many other conflicts. So I think it very much aligned with the current nature of how TV newsrooms have been compromised.
Just on the external, external view of that, India wouldn't have been on its own in seeing that kind of coverage. Like from an Irish perspective, like the coverage that we would have had in Ireland compared to, say, what we were seeing in the UK was vastly different. When our reporters would go to Europe, we were treated like we were insane. And that we were misinforming our public rather than not just towing by what Israel and Netanyahu were telling people. I had politicians who came back from Europe who said that they wanted to bring up the humanitarian situation in Gaza. This would have been maybe spring of 2024, and they were stopped from doing that. So these would have been politicians of left-wing parties, and they were coming back being like, I was so happy that, the centrist parties of our government were our government. They were like, they had never seen them in such a good light. So I think you're definitely not on your own. We would have seen that. It has changed now, but only in the last few months.
In fact, sorry, can I just quickly add one thing? Just consider this, that Israel's finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, comes to India and signs a deal, some kind of financial agreement with the finance ministry in the middle of the genocide. This is a man he's a war criminal. He's wanted by the ICC. He makes constant genocidal statements all the time. There are several countries he can't visit because of the threat of arrest. He comes here, signs this agreement. It's reported as a routine news event. Like any other visiting government functionary comes and signs an event, this is being reported. There's not a single question raised in the media because of, as he was pointing out, because of the fact that you've got this huge pressure to not question the government on something as egregious as the Smotrich visit. Just goes, unremarked.
Right. That's all we have time for. Abhinandan is doing this. So our guests will meet you outside. You can have a chat. Thank you so much for being a wonderful audience. Thank you.